Or which word I was going to do first. And
Yeah. So, or you could do the whole title, act out the whole thing.
act out the whole title.
So which were you going to do? Chunk down
I
or
was going
chunk?
to chunk down to each word at a time.
Okay, so that's okay. All I want you to do is say, okay, this is a sleight of mouth strategy. Okay, so do
Okay.
forwards. There's the fourth word.
When? Gone with the wind.
Now,
I'm good at this.
so
What's gone with the wind?
Yeah. Now the thing is, I'd like for you to think about, because what we're doing here is we're talking about deep structure and nonverbal analogies to sleight of mouth. How did you figure it out? I mean, did you start taking this behavior and putting it in different contexts? Did you go to language first and say, it looks like wind, well, what else would go with Gone with the Wind, so on and so forth, and put in terms of book titles? Huh?
Her strategy of saying, like, 4 words, and then that she's going to, she was, like, she went through Gone with the Wind, I mean, like, on her fingers, and then she did 4, and then she, like, with the whole chunk. I mean, it ended with the word wind, but she acted...
By the way, what did she act out? And I think what Mary is leading to is what she acted out was a consequence, right? You have to act out a consequence, which, okay, so what I want you to, the purpose of doing the little exercise, number one, to give you something nonverbal to do, since what we're doing is so verbally oriented for the most part. And number two...
Why don't you send them out to have sex?
To have you think about how these nonverbal things are expressions of the sleight of mouth patterns we've been using. Chunks up, chunk down, consequence, attention, that kind of thing. Yes?
How would she have done my chunking up?
Let's do a chunk up. How could you do?
How could I have chunked up? I'm making a stutter. Don't do it.
All right, I'll show you what I could do, okay? You could go, or I can go, something like that, where it's gone, it's blown away, it's gone with the wind. So I take the whole concept. If I chunk down, let's say if I want to chunk down, I'd take something like, I could take the first word, gone, and I want to use an analogy, so I can go, it sounds like, it's like, and then I might take, I could take something like fawn, which would be a similarity. It's a
or gun.
Yeah, gun with the wind. Sounds like. And then blow somebody away with it. Yeah.
Now we know I was gone with the wind too. My whole body was kind of gone.
Yeah, she was actually doing sort of a whole thing. So but you could chunk down. When you do the chunk down and make an analogy, it sounds like or a similarity.
But the effectiveness as a communicator is the same.
Right.
Like, if you're not pacing, you cannot read it like when you were blue, that was terrible.
Well.
But the point of it is that would not be a good intervention.
No.
I mean, at least for me.
Yeah.
For someone else, it might be a good intervention. So you try to match your intervention strategy to the person.
Yeah. So what he's saying is, I was trying to just demonstrate what I would try to do for a whole thing, and he says, well, that didn't work for him. He wouldn't know how to do that. And so that, I think what's interesting about it is that it is a real nice analogy to the kind of things that we're talking about, as he's pointing out in terms of pacing and leading, as well as technique, strategy, what you're trying to accomplish, whether you tend to go to small pieces or tend to go to whole things, tend to go to consequences, tend to go to analogies. Any one of those would be a useful sleight of mouth strategy. So what I'd like to do then is to say, we'll take, it's 11:30 now, let's take, 20 minutes? And what we can do is if you want like the first 10 minutes, what you could do is to get together into groups, or the second 10 minutes, however you'd like to do it, and do a little bit with the charades. If you don't want to, you can go relax. If you do want to, what Denise can do is to set up some of the groups. So we will start working again in 20 minutes. If you'd like to do the... I think everybody's out playing charades or something, or else hooky, one or the other.
All that information that never shows up.
Yeah, I know, I know. Give them all the good stuff in the morning. Actually, there was an interesting follow-up to that. We were going a little further, and where's, let's see him.
Jack.
Jack? I guess he's out there. Anyway, Jack was, it's okay, he doesn't have to, we were talking about a follow-up, and he said there was another interesting result of doing this thing where they paid people on Monday, and I thought it was an interesting thing because we started talking about reinforcement, that it's not so much just that you get the money. If money is your reinforcement, and if it's your only reinforcement, then you get into interesting things about reinforcement schedules. For example, if a rat pushes a button and it doesn't get the food out of this thing from pushing the button until a week later, do you think it's going to make an association? Do you think it's going to want to push the button more? No. So the interesting thing then becomes, when do you give people the money? The more that they see it connected with their efforts, then the more they're going to make the connection, the more it's going to become a reinforcement. So one of the things that Jack was pointing out is that actually they kept trying to get people to come in and work on Saturdays, which was really difficult, even though they were paying them time and a half. So they found that an interesting added benefit was that if they paid people on Monday, they saw their immediate results, the results more immediately from the extra work that they did on Saturday. And so it was a real interesting thing that they could see the results sooner, which actually tied in the motivational element even more. And so it was another interesting continuation of that process of how to take the belief that people are solely motivated by money and actually use it to create more options. Here's what I wanted to do next is we went over some basic strategies here. I want to do some more demonstration with other beliefs. I know we took kind of one here and we went around it from a number of different points of view. I want to do some more demonstrations of putting these together. However, I also would like to have you get a chance to solidify in your behavior some of the patterns that we've done so far. The chunking up, chunking down, etc., going to intent, we also talked about a little bit. And I want to introduce a couple of other ones that will sort of be our major patterns for the rest of the day. And remember, I said I'd like to do this in the context of a role play where two people kind of role play a conflict, and you'll be using sleight of mouth patterns to create a conflict, and then take a person who's going to be a negotiator, and the conflict you can set up can either be a business conflict or it can be a family conflict. I don't care what it is. It doesn't matter. It could be between a teacher and a student or two teachers or however you want to set it up. And then what I'm going to do is, while the two people are out setting up their role play, I'm going to keep the third person in here and give you a couple of extra patterns. And your job is going to be then to resolve the conflict. And the people who have role played it, your job is of course to role play it to the best of your ability. And we'll see how can you use sleight of mouth as opposed to just one-on-one with somebody to create a resolution where it's not me that's arguing with this person, it's me that is actually working from the point of view of setting frames on their behavior where they're dealing with one another. So to do that, the first step is to get into groups of threes. So why don't we first get into groups of threes and then decide which two, if somebody has a role play that they'd like to do, decide which two are